Hey guys, just before we get into it, we would like to acknowledge our podcast partners in Beyond Blue.
If you're feeling low, anxious, or need to talk to someone, please contact the people at Beyond Blue. Their phone number is 1300 224 636.
You can visit them on the website as well at www.beyondblue.org.au/get support. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Lystics AFL podcast. I'm your host, John Van Norden, here with me as always. My best mate, Sean Lewis. Sean, how you doing this week, mate?
Johnny, doing very well. Nice to hear a bit of pep in your voice for a change. You're a bit more up and about than last time. Clearly, your lovely wife is not sleeping in the room next to you and you're trying to keep it down. So
That is true. Yeah, no, she likes to sleep in the morning. So when we start recording in the morning, I'm typically a little bit quieter, but she is a night owl.
yes,
So we can record at night and yell,
yes.
which is the way that we like to operate. I mean, how are you tracking this week, mate? Anyway, we're going to try to record 2 episodes tonight, so this will be the first. We will release them separately, but we'll be moving along with some level of pace, so that we can make sure we get through two. But
Yep.
how are you tracking, mate?
Yeah, look, tracking all right, mate. Had a bit of an interesting weekend with the leg. Infection may or may not have
Oh
come back.
no,
We're just not quite sure. So
mate.
precautionary back onto antibiotics while everything sorts itself out. But look, I'm pretty hopeful. It was just it's an issue caused by a medical device I was wearing, being an ankle brace that was rubbing on where the bolt head is in my leg and irritated the area because it certainly doesn't feel like the infection did last time.
Okay.
But it just didn't look particularly happy when I went to the doctors. So they've we've gone precautionary, which is probably a good move. So yeah, look, I mean, I'm comfortable with where it's at the moment. Just got to play the waiting game, and it's another 2 weeks off the booze. So that's I think I'm up to what about. I think I've had about 3 beers in, or getting close to 3.5,
3 months.
4 months. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it just makes them taste better at the end, doesn't it? It's probably the opposite to a lot of Victorians as well.
yeah. Lockdown has become a bit of a booze fest for some people. But that's all right. Look, it's I mean, it is what it is, mate. You just got to rather than letting it defeat you, you just got to keep going. So, like, my recovery continues. I'm recovering very well. The leg's doing really well, and I've got wonderful family around me, and obviously having my beautiful daughter and lovely wife, it makes life a lot easier, and my
Yeah.
work's very supportive. So, apart from that, like, yeah, that's basically been the main change this week. But it's yeah, it has its moments, but I haven't been down too much, and just kind of want to just get on with it and get through it and be fully recovered and get back to playing some basketball and getting around. And a few more years and I can play old man football. So
That's going to be the days, aren't they? You'll beat me there, but we'll both eventually be at the 35 and being able to play that level of football, which would be nice.
yeah.
Um,
How about
and
you?
I'm
What's news?
yeah, I'm tracking okay as well. I mean, I was saying to you before we started recording that I probably just got a few too many open loops at the moment, or juggling a few too many plates. No, that's not right. It's definitely open loops. Like Sean and I are both engineers by trade, and one thing that engineers don't like is not closed things. They like to close off bits of information and everything, and that's sort of what it's like for me this week with work. I just have a lot of things on my mind that aren't decided on one way or another, which is frustrating for me. So I'm hopeful that by the weekend, so not the start of the next episode, but by the end of the following one, I'll know a lot more and sort of feel in a lot better position. But until then, it's just open loops after open loops. So let's see how the next few days go.
Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. You're task orientated, I think, is the correct wording there. You like to tick
Yeah,
things off your list.
I definitely do.
That's,
Yeah, I don't want to have to think about them anymore. So it'll be nice in a couple of days, but just until then,
yeah,
a little bit tired and looking forward to closing them off.
yeah. And engineers are famous for dealing with change really well. So
Super well. Yeah. Yeah, we're good like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
look, um, we're actually talking about a really fun side tonight, which is Carlton.
yeah,
Carlton are always a really fun side to review because they have quite a strong bent towards the to youth, or so we think. I think that's always the sort of the perception is that Carlton are recovering from being a bottom side with a lot of top draft picks, and when are they going to make it all the way back up the top? And I guess that's still sort of the question we're facing when we look at their list profile.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's a really kind of interesting list, Carlton, because yeah, they have been rebuilding for a while, but when you actually dig into the details, it's not as clear cut as you think. So, list profile wise, they're 23 years 10 months at the start of the year, which was the 11th oldest, roughly where they finished. In terms of median, they're one place higher. 23.2 is their median age, so 23 in maybe 2 or 3 months there, and so that finishes them 10th on the overall median list. Games wise, they're ninth overall with an average games of 63.6, and the median games was 37.5, which has them again in ninth. So I guess them finishing, what was that, 11th, based working backwards on our list reviews.
Yeah,
They finished about where their list is, but it's one of those ones where when you actually start to dig in, and we did a bit of a podcast on this earlier in the year, when you actually look at their game day best 22, the averages jump a lot. So and I know everyone talks about, you know, it being skewed heavily by Simpson and Betts and all that, but I think we've talked about it before that it's not just Simpson and Betts. They've got 7 players 30. I think it's 7 or 6. 7 players 30 or older, and 6 of them are in their best 22. So it's not just Simpson and Betts that throw them out. But in terms of their best 22, they sat sixth on the table for average age and eighth for overall experience. So they actually, when they've got no injuries, they put out quite an experienced list. So that's one of the anomalies with them. Jumping
yeah,
into their depth chart, 4 key forwards, 15 general forwards with 4 mid forwards, I should say. 10 midfielders, 3 rucks, 7 general defenders, and 7 key defenders. So it's a weird balance when I look at it.
it is a little bit weird. I think probably because I would expect the general forwards to just be distributed a bit better, as in if it said 14 mids rather than 15 with 4 mid forwards. So if it was 14 midfielders and 11 general forwards, it'd be better. If it was 14 midfielders with 6 key forwards and 9 general forwards, be even better. Probably just too many in between types.
Yeah. And
Not enough specialists.
And I remember when I was looking at the mid forwards, I really, because when I saw that, I was a bit like, oh, that doesn't quite add up. But like the ones that are listed as mid forwards is like Paddy Dow, who even though he's probably going to end up a midfielder, he was certainly being played that way when he's played. Jack Martin played predominantly off a flank, so I mean, is he even a midfield forward? Is the question.
Yeah,
Josh Honey, I'm not sure where he plays. I remember he made a debut, but I'd have to go back and look at it. And then Zach Fisher's the other
yeah,
one who I consider a midfielder, but has been told by David Teague he's going to have to be a small forward. So when you actually have a look
yeah,
at those mid forwards, they genuinely have played a lot of mid time. At least 3 of them have, and I think Josh Honey probably did as well. So it's a bit. It's not that they can't go through the midfield. It's just that they're not being used there. And then yeah, I mean, I really found it quite strange, but it also kind of ties into what's missing from Carlton, doesn't it? Like only having 10 midfielders and 4 mid forwards, who predominantly play forward. That's why their balance is kind of off. Um,
yeah.
they got a lot of
And look, Yeah, go.
They got a lot of us. They got a pretty good spine. You know,
Yep.
they've got plenty of height and everything. So I mean, there's not too much there to worry about from a height wise. I just think the balance between their generalists and um, general midfielders, general forwards, and the specialist kind of guys as well just needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I agree with that, mate. And it sort of shows up in some of their issues. I mean, as you said, for someone like Sam Fisher, we probably not Sam Fisher. We're talking about Zach Fisher.
Zach Fisher.
Um, in long retired, yeah. For me, he's like clearly a mid. And he actually adds balance to their midfield group too, being like a more of an outside long kicking player. It sort of is good at being the release or good at playing like inside and on a wing as well. So the fact that he's been playing forward, why Murphy has been played on a wing and Kerno's been played on the ball, is sort of a little bit bewildering to me. But hey, I'm not the coach. That's fine.
Yep. Key changes.
Let's look at some of the some of the key changes. So the outs: Tom Bug, Alex Fasolo, and Dale Thomas retired. I'd say that probably Fasolo and Bug may have been delisted anyway.
I think Bug
Um,
retired before the season
oh,
started.
retired, yeah, mid-year, yeah, that's right. Delisted Josh DeLuca. I think he was taken in the mid-season draft. Jared Garlett, Pat Kerr, Kim Lebois. He's always tricked me with his name.
Lebois.
Yeah, Matt Lebois. I don't know, Matt Lebois, Matt Loby. Funny, you got me. Jared Pickett and Angus Schumacher. And then there were some players as well. So Phillips went out as ruck depth for just a swap of picks, effectively a slight upgrade in picks, but nothing really. Eddie Betts came in for a fourth rounder. Pitnet came in for a similar deal that Andrew Phillips went out for, just a swap of picks, really,
I'd say
not a whole lot
that's a
else.
win for Carlton. That was Phillips out, Pitnet in. Pitnet's shown a
Yeah,
bit this
Pitnet.
year.
Yeah, he did. Jack Nunes they got as a free agent, and then they were able to make some trades on draft night as well, which resulted in some players. So one of the trades was trading 11 and 62 for 17 and 22. They used 17 to get Kemp. They then on traded 22 and 55 to get 20 and got Sam Philp.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, really, Philp and Kemp from last draft, it's fair enough. Like Kemp, I think was a reasonable player. He's
Hello.
probably got a high enough ceiling. It'd be interesting to see where they think he plays. Because if they play him as a mid, I think that he's going to clash with some of their other mids that they've recruited over the last few years. So I probably think that they'll play him as a utility, but let's see how that pans out. As for the key players, we look at the key players for now. Paddy Cripps obviously is a very key player for them. Had a bit of a down year, but he's still going to be the rock that they build around. Harry McKay, Sam Doherty, Jacob Wadering, and Ed Kerno. I found it actually hard to have their key players, their fourth key player, because Ed Kerno is probably it's probably starting to shallow out then where there could be any of those players really. You could have Liam Jones in that spot. You could almost have Sam Walsh in that position already. There's a couple of players that sort of are relatively important to Carlton structure, just not important as those other four.
Yep.
And into the future, when you look, there are some players that will still remain there. So Cripps, McKay, and Wadering. Walsh definitely steps in. He's probably going to be the key player for them. And I think probably the player that will help turn their fortunes around. And Charlie Curnow, who missed the year, so he probably would have been in this key players list if he was playing. But I think we forget how dangerous and hard to match up on he is, and he really adds a different element to that forward line.
Yeah.
So
I think
looking
it's
forward to
fair to
seeing him
say
back.
that Doherty as well definitely has a few more years left in him, providing no more knee injuries. But he,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. I think I left him out of the key players, and you probably agree with me on this. For the fact that this future is looking at Carlton being successful, and I think in order for them to be successful, he can't be one of their best 5 players. He can be a very good and reliable halfbacker, but you really need some of your centre half forward to grow and really accelerate his development and become a dominant force in the AFL.
Yeah.
They're just going to have more impact on you winning the game.
Yeah, agreed. Best 22?
Yeah, I mean, I could take us through the best 22. So this is, of course, looking at this year. So Plowman, Jones, and Doherty making up the back line. Simpson, Waitering, and Sam Petrevski-Seaton across the halfbacks. Walsh, Cripps, and Murphy across the middle. Fisher, Curnow, and Martin across the half-forward line. Cunningham, McKay, and Betts across the full forward line. Cruiser, Setterfield, and Curnow in the midfield. Cruiser obviously missed a huge chunk, but he would have been there if he was not injured. And Casbolt, Nunes, Gibbons, and McGovern on the pine.
Yeah.
And I guess this is potentially a good and bad. So I'll start talking about it straight off the back of the best 22. Is that this 22 was actually quite, I don't know, solid all year. There weren't that many injuries. So they had a relatively good year with injury. So they had some key injuries. So Newman, Cruiser, and Curnow were sort of key injuries, but they have depth. Cruiser was replaced by Pitnet and Newman was replaced by probably Simpson. Those guys are going to switch spots next year if Newman's back. So there wasn't really that big a drop off, and the rest of them played probably like 19 games each, or 19 plus games. So it was a relatively consistent side, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly benefited from that consistency, and I think the benefit will probably be more next year that they'll see it, providing they can stay injury free. I mean, Wiedering was unlucky not to be AA. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I might be wrong here, but I thought he had a belter of a year. Cripps had a down year for him, and you wonder whether he carried an injury or is it the evolution of Carlton's midfield where it starts to take the load off him. I felt Setterfield really had a great year, really stood up this year and showed the talent that had us, quite excited about him in his underage years. There's certainly a lot of positives for them. I felt that Fisher, when he came back in his new role up forward, was very good. And yeah, like Sam Petrevski-Seaton was solid for most of the year as well. Gibbons and Nunes certainly carved out roles for themselves as role players. McGovern up and down, but reasonably okay for the year. So I think for them, it's been a year where probably guys who haven't been performing, like Setterfield and McGovern and stuff, and even Petrevski-Seaton a little bit, they got some consistency in their game. We heard the ridiculous commentary around Walsh at the start of the year, whether he was a waste at pick 1, which was just absolute garbage. He showed his class throughout the year. He's just going to be a star for them for years to come. So, I think as crappy as it kind of is for them finishing 11th, and I do think their list is probably a little bit more advanced than we all think. As you said, bringing Curnow back next year is going to straighten them up a lot, and I think that they'll certainly be a much improved side if they can stay fit again.
Yeah, I mean, some of the good things from this year is that they, even with their side being I don't know, close but no cigar. They really never got that blown out. Probably that's not true in first halves. I think in the last few games there was some first halves where they were down by 40 or 50 points and they were able to work it back. But they didn't get blown out of games, which is good. That's a step.
Well,
They had to take one more step. But
they finished with a percentage around 94, so that's an indication that they're about they were 7-10 record. So a 94 percentage you would expect like an 8 and 9 record, so they're about one game off where you might expect them. I think when I looked at the games, I should have actually written it down, but so I'll go off memory. I may be incorrect here, and I'm sure someone in Twitterverse can correct me pretty quickly. But I think they had 7 games that were roughly decided by about 10 points or less. And I think they won 4 and lost 3. So they were one of those sides. They could have been 10-7 or 7-10, or
Yeah,
even what's that, -4, 3 and 14.
yeah,
So they won a few close ones, but they were, yeah, I thought they were pretty good overall. Probably a big thing that I noticed, and it's good that probably Brennan Bolton was told to play the kids, whereas Teague's kind of had the license to play the best side, and it's kind of how the list is built. Really, like the list
yeah,
isn't really built for real youth. Their best 22 has a lot of guys, 27 and above in it, so they need to be, you know, we talked about, Murphy playing over Zach Fisher. There's a reason why that should be happening, um, given their list build. And then some real positive news in the off season. Zach Williams is looks like he's coming to Carlton on some good money to play midfield, by all accounts in the media. And
yep,
Adam Sard's nominated himself, so goes a long way to replacing the sublime skills of the retired Cade Simpson. So I think that's really positive news for the Blues as well. They're two guys that are in that kind of 26-year-old bracket, 28, it's 27 maybe for Sard, 26. I can't remember. They're about that age, and
yeah,
they kind of fit with that list quite well, and they'll just replace some older guys. So I'd expect to see kind of Ed Curnow pushed out of the rotation a bit more next year with Williams. So
well, yeah, I think we, I think we hope so. I mean, that's sort of really where I'm at with those guys. I think that it's been great that they've been able to play them in their core roles, but it's almost gone the other way slightly too much now. And hopefully, with some of these players, as you said, coming in that are sort of that middle age bracket, it'll provide more opportunity for the younger guys and less opportunity for the senior guys. It's just about time for that transition to happen, I think.
yeah, agreed. Probably the bad, which is what we kind of touched on.
Yeah.
Six of their six oldest players. I think it's six. I'm just looking at it. Yeah, of their six oldest players, and maybe we throw Liam Jones in there being the seventh because he's pretty much 30. Basically six players every week were 30 plus on match day, predominantly, apart from a few instances. But you're looking at Cade Simpson played a lot of games, Eddie Betts played a lot of games, Mark Murphy, Matty Cruiser was injured, so he's out of it. Ed Curnow, Kaz Bolton, Liam Jones. So they're pretty
Yeah.
much 30 and above. I mean, Liam Jones he turns 30 in February before the start of the next season. So, he's 29 this year, but, it's near enough kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
and leading from that is, what does happen when Murphy, Betts, Curnow, these guys all retire. Obviously, Cruiser and Simpson have gone. I'm concerned with Murphy especially because I think his output has been very good.
Yep.
And I'd be, yeah, that's where they hope a kid like Paddy Dow comes in. But if you're not playing him, how's he coming in?
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at that midfield general forward sort of split in the list profile, two of those we're talking about there, two of the better ones, Murphy and Kerno, are coming out of the midfield. They're not coming out of the general forwards line, which is where we need to see them come out of. Really, we need to see more midfielders. So, look, I'm interested to see how that sort of all travels. I guess sort of one of the other questions, and it's a question we'll always have on Carlton really until they quote unquote fulfill their destiny. Is are they where they should be? Like for me, they're probably almost there. But they've been I feel like they've been almost there for 2 years now. Walsh marked a point for me where they sort of turned and got a player that can genuinely lead them forward. I think he'll end up being the captain of that club, even though Cripps will still be there.
Yep.
But I just thought that they would. I don't know. I think that they should be ready to take that step. Let's see if it happens next year. I guess.
Yeah, and that's it's probably the big question mark with them a lot of the times. And I think Sard and Williams will go a long way to maybe helping them, get that extra uh, few inches they need to make finals.
Yeah,
I think, and there's talk that they're into some other guys as well. So it'd be really interesting to see where they can take it. But effectively, yeah, David Teague's got a list on his hands that's he's playing the way he wants to, and I think he's playing him quite well. I think he's playing him right. But the question is, have they got enough talent to get there? Is probably my biggest question mark as well. So you know,
yeah,
um, guys like Kaz Bolton, um, Ed Kerno, Casbolt, Newman, Nunes, um, probably lesser extent guys like Plowman and McGovern,
yeah,
and Michael Gibbons even. So I kind of look at those guys and I go, are they the guys that are going to get you to your flag and win you your flag?
yeah,
And it's just kind of hard to see. So my question is, have that with the players they've got and the makeup they've got, is this going to limit their list? And yeah, so I guess that kind of leads me into the ugly for me, which is the risk that their young talent that they've got. So I'm talking guys like Dow, Stocker, Phil, McCready, and even Zach Fisher. They're not developing well enough, and especially having lost a year of development with the VFL not being run this year.
yeah.
Um, it could amount to a lot of wasted drafts and talent, which is really concerning.
Yeah, yeah, it's the concern for me as well. I mean, I do think that next year is going to be a really it's going to be a turning point for this list because next year is going to be the year that Dow has to prove that he can make it, the year that Stocker probably has to prove that he can make it in the side, the year that Fisher maybe needs to prove that he can play midfield if he's ever going to get that chance. It feels like a bit of a turning point year for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure about. I think Stocker and Philp have cash in the bank. They're both obviously Philp's only 1 year in, and Stocker only two. I think Dow certainly, Fisher yes. They're now pushing that 21, 22-year-old age bracket, so they both certainly probably need to really break out. But that said, I still think with the looming retirement of Mark Murphy and that sort of thing, I think that they need to be putting a bit of time and making sure these young guys playing consistent football, at least at a VFL level next year, and playing the way they need to. I think Harrison McCready is another one who gets overlooked a little bit. I think he's showed a bit of promise when he's played. I wouldn't mind seeing him get a bit more of a run as well, just to increase that depth in the back line.
Yeah, there's been players that were injured this year, like Marchbank. Like, where's Marchbank at the moment? In terms of you look at their back line, is he replacing Liam Jones? Not sure if he is, and I don't know if he's replacing Plowman either. I don't know where he sort of fits at the moment, and I guess it sort of depends on when guys like Jones move into retirement age. But you're right; they have to start making it. Otherwise, I mean, it could be wasted.
Yeah, exactly. Off contracts now, mate. I'll start off with what we do know, and then we can go through the rest of the list with you. So, delisted. So Ben Silvani, Darcy Lang, Finbar O'Dwyer, and Hugh Goddard were all delisted. Cade Simpson retired, and Matthew Cruiser has retired. So, well done to Cruiser and Simpson on very long careers. Cruiser unfortunately had a lot of injury, but still managed to play the better part of 200 games ish, I think.
Yeah, I think he made 200. That's pretty good. I thought they would have played less.
189 I've got here.
Yeah,
Maybe that,
pretty good.
yeah. So it's not bad at all. Jumping into it, Callum Moore,
D list.
Cam
Yeah,
Polson.
please. D list. I thought I thought that was a given. By my saying please, but no, I look. You know how I feel about Paulson. Probably everyone does. I think that he's been given too many chances. I don't think that he's much of a player.
Yeah, fair call. Interesting one. Eddie Betts, what do you do?
Probably give him 1 year. He played well enough to suggest it, and maybe that's a 1 year that's sort of playing and coaching type of position because it's a role that they need more of those sort of dangerous forwards. Otherwise, he can step into retirement and be pretty happy.
Yeah, fair call. Fraser Phillips,
Probably a D list for me.
Harrison McCready.
1 more year, maybe. It's sort of hard to know. So he played some all right footy in the reserves games this year, but as you said, it wasn't really a fair year to measure. So 1 year or D list.
Jack Nunes.
Give him another year, maybe two, but hard to know with Nunes because I don't think he's that good a player when he's playing. He's sort of still a little bit average, but let's say, yeah, give him 1 year.
Yep. Matt Owies.
D list for me.
Interesting one, this one. Matthew Kennedy.
Yeah, I would delist him. I mean, I'm pretty confident on my delistings. Typically, I go a little bit earlier than what the clubs would. I think they'll probably be because they traded for him and he was a reasonably high pick. They'll probably invest another year. I just don't think that he's really shown anything. He's sort of looked off the pace since he's come, and I guess we were sort of expecting since he's been drafted that he would take a step and his body would change and he'd start to turn into a more powerful and explosive type of big mid. But it just never really happened.
Yeah. Look, I'm probably less confident on the D list. I'd give him one with maybe a trigger for even a second. I think that there's still something there to work with. And I think given the delistings that have already happened and the amount of delistings you've made yourself, mate, there's no one left to cut really. So
That's okay, mate. There's always more people to cut.
yeah, you're like Homer Simpson. You're
Yeah,
cut, you're cut, you're cut. It was really
yeah,
really hard, but I had to cut you.
yeah.
Mitch McGovern.
I'd give him 2 years. Yeah, like he hasn't. He's probably a hard one as well because I think that he's got to be tried in a different role. I don't think that he's worked so far as that third forward. Maybe throw him back, see what happens.
Yep. Tom Williamson.
I've got him having 2 years just because I think that he's earned the right with his form this year. Uh, I'm still I'm not sold on him as a player either. I mean, one of the good things is that in AFL you don't have to be the most talented player to play a role, and I think that he's got the capability to play a role really well. He's got to probably step up a few more notches as well.
Yeah, look, I think 2 years is fair. I think he's earned that. And Will Setterfield.
I'd probably give him 3 years. I thought that he was really good this year. Maybe for him, he'll only want two because he might be thinking, "I'll get really good in the next 2 years and then get a big contract." And him, sorry about the hiccups. By him, I probably mean his manager is suggesting it's something like a 2 year contract. But if I was Carlton, I'd be giving him three.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think this year, the the biggest compliment that I think came out of this year was I remember hearing a lot of noise about him 2 years ago when he came. What's this kid? He's not as good as he's all cracked up to be. Whereas this year, pretty much not a lot of people said much about him, and I think people who were giving him a knock just quietly disappeared into the bushes there. I thought he was
Yep.
really good this year, and I mean I know you and I were very big fans of him in his junior year, and it was disappointing to see him not live up to what we thought he could be. But yeah, certainly this year he's shown a lot of the traits that made him really attractive as a junior. He was a really good guy to watch when he was younger. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to see him playing and playing in that real midfield role as well, which is really good. So really pleased for him and definitely earned at least a 3-year deal there.
Yep.
What's missing, mate?
It's something that's probably been missing for a few years, and we sort of mentioned it at the start of every one of the drafts for the last few years, or these periods for the last few years, which is just more high quality mids. I think that they've made some good decisions with midfielders and who to target, but I think that they could always make more of those decisions. Um, I think this year they probably had an opportunity to make a decision like that. They ended up trading back again. So I think it was a trade that I'm not sure if I remembered to cover it when we looked at the trades, but originally they bid on Liam Henry, who probably would have been a good fit. They bid on Tom Green, who would have been a good midfielder, so would have been a good fit. And then they traded back from 11, where they probably could have taken a player like Sam
Flanders.
Flanders and been really happy. Like Flanders is the exact type of player that they were probably looking for, which is a high class midfielder. So, um, as much as I think that they might end up trading picks again this year, I really think that they need to select some more high talent mids.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And not only select them, but also develop them.
Yeah,
Look, probably the other ones there are the wingers and developing another dangerous small forward. I mean, they're hoping Zach Fisher can fill that last need, but obviously, if Eddie Betts goes, they're still going to need some good small forwards. Wingers wise is just obviously with Mark Murphy. And even Ed Kerno plays out on a wing a bit as well, so just losing that experience out there will hurt. In terms of trade bait, controversially, two guys we've been speaking about development wise, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if either of these guys asked for a trade in Paddy Dow or Liam Stocker. Um,
yeah,
I think as we said, not getting a place because a guy like Jack Nunes is running around in front of you. It might peeve a guy who was pick 3. Nothing against Jack Nunes. I think he's a handy player. He's a good role player.
yeah,
But I think Paddy Dow's ceilings are a fair bit higher than Jack Nunes, and I think it would be quite frustrating. And he may want to stay and fight for his spot, but the risk there is that you go another year fighting for your spot and not getting development, and then potentially football's a harsh game. Just because you're a pick 3 doesn't mean you stay in the game for a long time. There's
yeah,
plenty of examples of that. So just hope that he can. He may ask for a trade. So and to be honest, for Carlton, you're going after Adam Sard. Jeez, so
yeah.
you could probably throw Paddy Dow in there with a later pick and probably gets the deal done. He's the kind of player Essendon probably need, to be honest.
Yeah, they would probably have to take a risk like that. It's the kind of risk that if I was managing Essendon that I would want to make because they need more high quality mids as well.
They
So
could even go for both Liam Stocker and Paddy Dow.
yeah, you totally could. Be interesting to see what they do with Stocker Carlton because they made a big deal about him. I mean, their old list manager made a big deal about him. So it'd be interesting to see how that all pans out. I mean, I've sort of put a question mark against a player that I don't know if he would attract that much attention, but Jack Silvani, for me, and this is more like a clear the slate move. I sort of think that Jack Silvani was pretty lucky to get a 2 year contract extension at the end of last year, and probably, I think that if there was a club that was interested in taking a chance on him, and they were willing to offer a 4th or a 5th round pick just to move the contract on, I would probably consider it just to open up a list spot and move on from the Silvani era.
Yep. I'd probably keep Jack Silvani, to be honest. But anyway, um,
Where
I know.
we have differing opinions.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he offers a bit. He's certainly not bottom end of their list. He's not top end either, but I think he's not bad for that pool of players. That's probably between 30 and maybe 32 and 26 on the list. So I've got no problems with them holding him either.
Yeah,
draft pick wise, at the moment they got 7, 27, and 45 are their
Yeah.
picks. Um,
Yeah, it's. I
uh,
mean, it's a reasonable hand to start with. We've seen some of the clubs down towards the bottom of the ladder not have a first or not have a second round draft pick, so they're at least going in with the full hand.
yep, and I think pick 7 is a really it's probably one pick too late, isn't it? I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah,
I mean, you still potentially pick 7. You kind of get pick of you get the players potentially on the fringe. So does a Holland slip there or a Will Phillips slip to there or something like that? I think it's not a bad pick. You could
yeah,
pick up some decent, like a player who might slide a little bit because he hasn't been playing for the year. You could definitely pick up something, or a Tanner Bruin who you've said last week he's a potential there as well. So I don't think 7's a bad pick at all for them as well if they want to keep it. But moving on to trade and free agency, keeping it's going to be difficult. Obviously, Zach Williams is a restricted free agent. We're assuming, given the large size of the contract, that probably um, GWS aren't going to match.
yep,
So they'll just get whatever pick they get in compo. Adam Sard. We spoke about this
yeah.
trade a lot. Um, from a Carlton perspective, uh, Adam Sard isn't worth pick 7.
Definitely not. No.
He's
Um,
also not worth the reported inquiry about, what was it, Charlie Curnow, Sam Walsh, and who was the other one? Harry McKay.
yeah, yeah, something like that. There were three of their best young players. Their three best young players. Yeah.
And then I think the other one was pick 7 plus DeConning. I don't think is
Okay.
I think that was the other one. So, I mean, look, like these are all rumours, so we don't know how true it is, but certainly think every single one of those scenarios is well overs for Adam Sard. If I was in their shoes, I would be trying to split 7 if I could. So take 7 and 27 and split it into um, like Geelong's 15 and 17 or Brisbane's 16 and 18 or something, like something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty reasonable idea if they believe that Sard is worth a first round draft pick. I think the hard thing is going to be dealing with Essendon on that one. It's sort of an unfortunate position to be in, but you can. I think one of the things that you can do, and Essendon actually did this pretty well a few years back. So you could do a reverse Essendon, which is if Essendon aren't willing to deal with you early, just make trades. Start moving. Like when they say we demand 7 plus something else, then you offload 7 and get a balance of other picks.
It was
It's
St Kilda last year, I think, was
yeah,
that one.
it just maybe with Hill, like as in just start the ball rolling. So one idea that I had was sort of moving something like pick 7 on for a player like Quinton Narkle from Geelong, who may get squeezed out. And if you went pick 7 for Narkle and you get a pick back, so like a pick 14 or a pick 11 or a pick 16, wherever it sort of sits, just get a player that's going to be added straight to your best 22, add to your midfields, and a different look in that midfield depth, which they need to add and change the pick you have. So now the highest pick that they can ask for is around your 12 to 14 area. So what are you going to do now? Like as in maybe we try to turn that 12 to 14 into 2 picks as well and send them a later pick. But don't wait and just leave it up to the last day. That stuff never goes well.
Yeah.
So move it
So,
early.
so I would do exactly what you've said, except I wouldn't go for Narkle. I would just go for the 2 picks. I would literally just turn around, say to like, so we said last week with Essendon that they should, if pick 7's the objective, construct the trade to obtain pick 7. So that might mean that they have to give up Sard and a third rounder or something to get
Yeah.
pick 7. If that's what you want, then you have to construct the trade. It's not up to you to just go, I want pick this. It can't work like that. So
Yeah.
it's not. We spoke about this on Twitter today with a, got raised by one of our followers to us, and good negotiations are based on trust and your faith in the other party in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
if that party immediately, I think I use the example of if they're selling a BMW and then asking you for a Ferrari and a newer BMW, it doesn't quite work. Your trust is broken from the moment. Like, they're out to screw you, and
Yeah.
inherently people will take the position that is, okay, well, they're trying to screw me. Well, I'm just not going to do that. And then it drags on and on and on. And like you said, you've got to shift the dynamic on them. So they
Yeah.
want pick 7. That's what they want. You go to them and say, well, if you want pick 7, it'll be Adam Sard and X for pick 7. And if you come in with a reasonable, like, you don't go in with an unreasonable offer, you go in with a reasonable offer. And if that's rejected, you say, okay, no problems. Well, I've got an offer for pick 7. I'm going to go deal with that. And then I come, okay, well, the best I can do is pick 14, 15, 16, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if you want that, well, it's, Sard plus a 4th rounder or something. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to, you do what you're saying. You don't stop your trade.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, your objective is to get Adam Sard into your club, and you want to do that in a way that is, reasonable value for your club. And pick 7, I feel, is overs, and I think Carlton has rightly identified that. And if I was then, I'd go with reasonable offers, and then if nothing's forthcoming, then shift the dynamic of the trade.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the other options that we were sort of throwing around are players like a Tom Phillips. Tom Phillips has sort of been bandied around as somebody from Collingwood who might be moving on. He would play that wing role for Carlton, and probably would be a reasonable trade for pick 27, unless you could potentially get something back the other way if Collingwood were looking to offload the contract. But I think that's a reasonable move. One that was sort of a bit left of field, and it was just sort of thinking about how they could be better now, would be if North Melbourne were trying to move on Polek's contract, and were willing to pay some contract value, then maybe sending Polek plus a few picks, or plus a pick for either 27 or pick 7 plus a few picks coming back, and just try to go, okay, then we can get somebody that's going to be clearly best 22 now and for the next 3 to 4 years for us, and we can actually make a bit more of a push. So I probably think Phillips is the better option out of those two, but both of those players are wings that you could get for probably a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, potentially even less, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, Phillips for 27 feels a little bit overs to me as a outside observer. I think he's a good player, but there have been plenty of good players that have moved for
third rounders.
thirds. So
Yep.
certainly, I think 45 is probably low. Somewhere in between is about right. So it might be Tom Phillips plus a 4th for 27 or something like that.
Yeah, and sometimes you just see like a swap of futures as well. So maybe like 45 this year plus a future 4th for a future 3rd or something like that to sort of balance it back towards the pies a little bit. But something like that'll happen if a trade like that's going to go ahead.
Yep. Now, assuming they do manage to keep pick 7, who should they be looking at?
Probably, I mean, you got to look for someone with a little bit of difference at that pick, I think, because that's what we've been talking about with that midfield mix. So someone like Archie Perkins could be a reasonable fit, given his sort of excitement levels that he can produce. The other two players that I thought around this mark would be McRae, as sort of being a more of a outside type player that would add to that long-term midfield that they're building, or NOD, Nathan O'Driscoll, who showed some real athleticism, winning the agility test, finishing 2nd in the 20-meter sprint and the 2K. And he's a good player. He's a good tough player as well. So someone that can add to that midfield mix, really, I'd say at pick 7.
Yep. I think Archie Perkins is a ripper for them. I mean, they clearly... I think he's the kind of kid who can come in and make an impact straight away as a forward, and then move to the midfield eventually. He's a really nice size for a midfielder. Just needs to build his tank. But yeah, certainly an exciting player. And just, I guess, the only concern is we haven't seen him for a year, but the same could be said about McRae. McRae just feels a lot like Walsh to me.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. I think he's not close to as good as Walsh, but I think McRae kind of, yeah. I mean, look, like that could be their other winger, really. So, not a bad pick
Yep.
either. And yeah, O'Driscoll, we've spoken a lot about it. We like him. And then out at pick 27, this year, this draft's really hard to really speculate out this far, but we've kind of thrown down, Tom Powell, who's a midfield accumulator in South Australia, but he might come in a bit because he's got a body of work behind him this year. Corey Durden is a small forward as well. I think he's certainly could be something to fill a hole um, in their list. So yeah, and Jack Ginnivan is probably the last type. And again, he's a one of those general type forwards who can play midfield, which they seem to like as well. But I think he could also potentially fill that small mid-size forward because he's just very good at ground level. Like his skills off the ground are very good. So could be handy as a crummer there.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think that I think they'll have a reasonable draft. I think whatever they do, they'll have a reasonable draft. I think that they'll be able to keep a pick inside 30, and they just need to make sure that they take players that they can add to their midfield mix, and then start playing them, because it won't matter now. It's just going to affect them in a few years' time when they're really looking to be in the window. They need more players to be coming through as part of that midfield mix.
Yeah, agreed.
So what do they do? I mean, this is where we sort of move towards the decisions and the final words. So what are you sort of thinking that they do?
Yeah, so what I'd like to see from him, I think I kind of covered it above, is take 7 and 27, go get a couple of late teens picks, so 2 first rounders, use one facade and keep the other to use it for another player. Could trade it if you really want to, but I'd probably keep it to draft someone in the teens. I think there's certainly some good players being talked about in and around that late teens that could very well fit their list.
Yep.
I think the targeted recruitment of Sard and Williams is excellent. I think, Sard does help replace Cade Simpson. Williams goes into the middle, and I think he pushes Curnow out, which is
Yep.
fantastic. So I think they're, and not in a bad way for Ed Curnow, but I think it's fantastic for Carlton because I think it's really, really smart targeted recruitment.
Yep.
So I'm very, very happy with those two being targeted. If by some miracle they could get Jordan De Goey, which is another one that's been rumored.
Yeah, I think they ruled themselves out of
Did
that one,
they?
but yeah, but
Jeez, he's
he's the
exactly what they
he's
love.
exactly what they need. As in a
Oh,
type of player where we're sort of not talking about what they need in terms of additional off-field rumors and not rumors, but issues.
yeah,
We're talking purely role that he would play on the field. He's the type of player that I was talking about. That midfielder / explosive, dangerous forward
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Um,
yeah. Final words. Do you want to go
yeah.
first?
Yeah. Of course. I always like to go first. So I would just say it's probably time to fully commit to the stop getting failed players or almost players from other clubs. Just get genuine players, and Sard and Williams are good examples of that. Or go to the draft. I haven't liked the intermediate approach that they've sort of been taking for a few years now. And look, I don't think that that's the current list administration's fault. But if we're just looking in just the last 2 years, like Bug, Fasolo, DeLuca, Garlett, Lobe, Pickett, Goddard, Lang, these guys weren't getting games. I think DeLuca was coming up from the waffle, but he'd been delisted by Fremantle when Fremantle were down the bottom of the ladder. So a lot of these players are depth players at other clubs. They came to Carlton and were depth players for a few years. I think that they just need to focus on getting good players. Based on that, I would think really hard before signing Moore and Kennedy. Moore came across from Richmond, and Kennedy from GWS. I would think about getting a proper clean slate about not giving players 5 to 7 years to make it across multiple different lists. They get drafted to Carlton or they get traded in as very good players already.
Yep, not bad. Probably the things I'd add. It's felt for a couple of years that the list boss and the coach haven't been on the same page. So hopefully that's now corrected, and with the targeting of Williams and Sard certainly feels like they are on the same page. I probably look at their list, and we spoke about the age profiles, and it feels like it. You could quite easily build for the future, or you could go for now. And I think they need to make the assessment of do we have enough talent at the moment to make top four and give ourselves a shot at a flag. And if they make the assessment and they feel that that's the case, then they go for now and they commit to that. And that might mean making hard calls on guys like Dow and trading him out for picks to try and find something now or use it to get now players in. But I think it's been conflicted for far too long. So we think about the guys like, Casbolt, like Cruiser, even with all his injuries, and Ed Kerno and all that sort of thing. And we think about those guys playing. They were on the list when Bolton was there and they were supposedly playing young.
Yeah.
So, they've always kind of had this, we're a really young side, but we've got all these old players who are kind of best 22. And whereas Teague's kind of come in and been given the license to say, okay, well, this is our best 22. This is what it looks like. So I just really want the list strategy to match with what they're actually doing. Because, they're 11th at the moment and their list is middle tier for everything at the moment because they've kind of had that approach. It hasn't got to middle tier from natural development. It's done that by design, and they just need to stop that. So hopefully, and it certainly appears that way from the outside, that may have been addressed, and I hope they have. I really just hope they keep on that path, and if they get it right, they can certainly be a threat in 2 years' time. So,
yeah, mate. Look, I think that's going to be all from us. Did you want to wrap us up for the episode?
Yeah. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for listening. Stay strong to our Victorian listeners. We're getting close. I know there'll hopefully be an announcement in a couple of days to, fingers crossed, relax some of these restrictions for us so we can go and see some family and enjoy some time with friends as well. So encourage everyone to reach out to their friends, check on everyone's mental health. It's very important at the moment. I think there's a lot of lockdown fatigue going on at the moment. And just thank you to everyone for listening, and hope you've enjoyed these episodes. Me and John do definitely love doing them. And John, I greatly appreciate all your efforts in editing these, and especially this one, because it's going to be a bit of a tough one.
Yeah, hopefully you guys won't have noticed this. But Sean and I fell out of sync a few times. We had to stop recording and start recording to get it back on track. Then it happened a few more times. So look, it'll be fun. Hopefully it just seems like this flawless production. Let's see how we go. But thanks again, guys. I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
If you constantly worry that the worst is going to happen, you're not alone. 1 in 4 Australians will experience anxiety. Know when anxiety is talking. Visit Beyond Blue to start a life beyond anxiety.